Once again, I welcome back everyone for this course, Printed Circuit Board Design. So in this course, the next stage is to what is PCB. PCB is used to provide mechanical support and electrical connections for electronic components. So this is a major definition of PCB, where it is used to provide a support as a mechanical support, and it can be able to connect electrical components in a single board. That's what PCB board. It is also called as printed wiring board or etched wiring board. So most of the circuits are formed by a thin conductive layer made up of a copper on an insulating board called a substrate. That means a FR board they call. And the electronic components are mounted on the surface of the substrate and connected to the circuits. As I told, it is going to work as a substrate for connecting all the electronic components. And these components are soldered to a conductive track instead of using visible wires. So the visible wires is a major problem. So number of wires must be reduced. For that, this soldering is conducted of the components is done with a conductive track. And this PCB helps in compact designing and reliability and organized circuit layout. It is used in almost all electronic devices such as motherboards, network cards, graphics cards and storages. Overall, the history of PCB says the PCBs are used to point-to-point wiring, so where it made a bulky design and complex and less reliable design. These large circuits and manual wiring is required for frequent maintenance and replacement. And this is the making of electronic components, which is made by components are fitted one by one. So there is no PCB is manufactured during those periods. In 1920s, PCBs used materials like bakelite, masonite or wood with the brass wires riveted onto the boards. So it is commonly used in radios and gramophones. So this is the first stage of PCB used in radios and gramophones. And in the first double-sided PCB is done in 1947 with the plated through holes were produced. That means a PCB will be having double sides of a components fitting, and holes will be made in the PCB. In 1950s to 1960s, this resin-based PCBs are used with the materials. Resin-based materials are used in the PCB manufacturing. So the circuits are printed on one side with the components mounted on the other side. So the circuits are printed on one side, another side will be the components will be laid over on the other side. That is the resin-based PCB material. In 1956, US Army scientists received a patent for the process of assembling electrical circuits using printed wire and chemical etching. So this is the first patent on PCB. In 1957, the formation of Institute of Printed Circuits, which has established the standards for PCB manufacturing. This has made standards for single board layer manufacturing and double board layer manufacturing and multi-board layer manufacturing. In 1960s, this multi-layer PCB has started to production. So with more complex circuits, so which is done in the before the period of 1920s. So in 1960s, 70s, PCB layout designing using red blue tape and balloon sheets are conducted with, that means materials, and these are later converted to photographic manufacturing films. So that's one of the next stages of PCB manufacturing. In 1970s, many systems of PCBs are adopted, and hot air soldering and liquid photo imageable solder masks were conducted during 1970s. In 1980s, SMT, which is smaller components, are mounted on the PCB. So surface mount technology became popular during those periods in 1980s and reduced the PCB size immensely, and also it has increasingly component density. In 1990s, use of multi-layer rigid flex PCBs increased, boards became smaller and more complex. So that is another development in the history of PCB. In 1995, micro wire technology is introduced, which led to the high density interconnection PCBs, so which is a major breakthrough in 1995. In 2000, PCB manufacturing has achieved very fine trace spacing, which is 3.5 to 6 mil, which is smaller in size, and flex and rigid flex boards were widely used in 2000s. In 2010, Introduction to every layer interconnection technology ELIC has established and enabled extremely high density circuit design, and this has the history of PCB from 90s 20s to 2010. So where the PCB has manufactured in a single layer and is converted into double layer and it's converted to multiple layer, then it is used to reduce the size of the device, and multi-layer flexible boards are used, and different rigid flexible boards are also used. And at last, these are the different types of PCBs, where a single-sided PCB where the components will be layered and the layer also made on this on the one side. In double-sided, components are connected on both the sides. In multi-layer, the components are made with the help of through holes. So multi-layer PCBs are used to connect the components in layer by layer, depends upon the circuit drawn on the PCB. And rigid PCB, where the components are placed over the structure, but it has made the same significance of single PCB, but different SMD different devices are used to reduce the size of the device. And flex PCB is also used for human based or bio printed circuit boards, whichever is used. So flex PCBs are used, and rigid flex PCB where both the rigid and flexible PCBs will be used. And we will see in detail about all those types of PCB in the upcoming classes. Thank you.